The night was calm, the water still. A light breeze whispered through the trees as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Florida sky in deep shades of crimson. On the surface, it seemed like a perfect evening for a peaceful canoe ride. But sometimes, perfection hides the darkest truths. A man's laughter echoed softly over the quiet river. He was strong, confident, the kind of man who believed he could handle anything. But sitting behind him, holding the paddle in her delicate hands, was a woman who knew something he didn't. She had been planning this moment for a very long time. Her name was Judy Buenoano. To anyone who knew her, Judy was charming, graceful, and almost angelic in her smile. But that smile hid secrets. Secrets worth more than love, worth more than life itself. And as the canoe drifted further into the middle of the water, those secrets were about to surface. "Isn't it beautiful out here?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a warmth that could melt stone. He turned back to look at her, nodding with a grin. He trusted her, completely. That was his first mistake. What happened next? Nobody saw coming. Nobody except Judy. The canoe rocked gently, a sudden splash, and then silence. The man was gone, drowned. At least, that's what everyone believed. An accident, they said. Tragic, but just an accident. But was it really? This was no accident. This was murder, cold, calculated, and cruel. The year was 1983. His name was John Gentry, and he wasn't the first man to fall under Judy's deadly spell. No. This was just the beginning of something far darker. Something that would send shivers down the spine of every man who ever believed he was safe in the arms of the woman he loved. Because Judy Buenoano wasn't like other women. She was different. She was patient. She was clever. And she was deadly. They would call her the Black Widow, and for good reason. But before we get to the end of this story, the trials, the shocking revelations, and the ultimate punishment, you need to know how it all began. How a sweet-looking woman transformed into one of America's most dangerous female killers. It started long before that canoe ride. Long before John Gentry gasped for his last breath underwater. Judy Buenoano was born on April 4, 1943, in Buenoano, Texas. On paper, her life looked ordinary. But deep down, inside that small, quiet girl, there was a hunger, a darkness waiting to break free. She didn't want to live a life of struggle, of poverty. She wanted more. She wanted money, power, control, and she didn't care what it took to get it. For Judy, love wasn't about passion or devotion. Love was about opportunity. Every man she met was a stepping stone, a resource, a tool to be used, and eventually discarded. Her first known victim was her own husband, James Goodyear, an Air Force sergeant. They married, had children, and built a life together. But only Judy knew that life had an expiration date. After just 9 years of marriage, James fell gravely ill. His muscles weakened, his body burned with fever, and soon he was dead. The doctors were baffled. They thought it was natural causes, maybe a strange infection. Nobody suspected poison. Nobody looked at Judy. But Judy knew. She had done it. Slowly, patiently, she fed him arsenic, letting the poison destroy him from the inside out. And when he died, Judy didn't cry for long. She collected his life insurance, thousands of dollars, and started a new life, a richer life. James's death could have been the end of it, but for Judy, it was only a taste. The first kill was never enough. The power, the control, the money, it was addictive. And now she needed more. So she found another man, Bobby Joe Morris. Tall, strong, confident, exactly the kind of man Judy knew how to charm. He believed she was his soulmate. He believed she loved him. But love wasn't what Judy had in mind. Just like before, Bobby Joe started feeling sick. At first, he thought it was the flu. Then it got worse. His muscles wasted away. His organs shut down. He died in 1978. Once again, doctors couldn't explain it. Once again, Judy walked away with the insurance money. 2 men dead, 2 accidents, and Judy was just getting started. By the early 1980s, Judy had moved to Florida and reinvented herself. New city, new life, new opportunities. And then she met John Gentry, a successful businessman, wealthy, the perfect target. But Judy wasn't reckless. She played the long game. She seduced him, made him trust her, made him believe in their future together. She promised him love, happiness, a life worth living. And John believed every word. Until one day, everything changed. One December night in 1982, John's car exploded. Yes, exploded. The blast ripped through the still air like thunder, shattering glass and twisting metal into fire. Somehow, by a miracle, John survived. Barely. And as he lay in the hospital, broken and burned, investigators started asking questions. Who would want John dead? Who had access to his car? And why, just weeks before the explosion, had Judy convinced him to take out a massive life insurance policy in her name? The questions piled up, and for the first time, Judy was under suspicion. But before investigators could act, John recovered enough to talk. And what he revealed would send detectives on a journey so twisted, so shocking, it would uncover a trail of death stretching back decades. And this is where the real nightmare begins, because John Gentry wasn't Judy's only victim. Not even close. In the next part of this series, we'll go deeper into Judy's past, into the life of the woman who smiled sweetly while planning death in her mind. A woman who poisoned, burned, and drowned the men who trusted her the most. But the question is, how many more bodies are hidden in her story? And how far was Judy willing to go to keep her deadly secrets buried? The answer will haunt you. Stay with me, because what comes next will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and trust. Before Judy Buenoano became the Black Widow, she was just a little girl, small, quiet, innocent, or so everyone believed. But deep inside, something was brewing, something dark, something deadly. She was born in 1943 in the small town of Buenoano, Texas. Life was not kind to her. Her mother died when Judy was just 4 years old, leaving her and her siblings to face a world filled with uncertainty. Her father remarried, and Judy soon discovered what real pain felt like. Her stepmother was cruel, cold, ruthless. She beat Judy, humiliated her, and treated her like dirt. Judy learned something important in those early years. Nobody was coming to save her. If she wanted to survive, she would have to fight. And she did. By the time she was a teenager, Judy was tough, hard. No one could hurt her anymore, not physically, not emotionally. But this new version of Judy wasn't just strong. She was cunning. She had learned how to manipulate people, how to hide her true feelings behind a sweet smile, and most importantly, she had learned how to use pain as power. When she turned 17, Judy ran away from home. She wanted freedom. She wanted control. And she wanted a better life than the one she was born into. But freedom didn't come easy. She bounced from job to job, struggling to make ends meet. Men came into her life, men who wanted her beauty, her charm, and Judy gave them what they wanted, for a price. Then, in the early 1960s, she met James Goodyear, an Air Force sergeant. He was everything Judy thought she wanted: strong, disciplined, dependable. He offered her stability. He offered her security. And Judy took it. They married in 1962, and for a while, life seemed perfect. They had children. They had a home. They had the kind of life Judy had dreamed about as a child. But here's the thing about Judy. She never stopped dreaming. And her dreams were big. Too big for an ordinary marriage. Judy wanted money. Real money. She wanted luxury, comfort, and the power that came with it. But James didn't have that. He worked hard, sure, but hard work wasn't enough for Judy. She wanted more, and she was willing to kill for it. It started small. James would complain about feeling tired, weak, sick. At first, he thought it was just stress from work. Then the symptoms got worse. His muscles ached, his body burned with fever, his skin turned pale. Doctors ran tests but found nothing unusual. Weeks turned into months, and then, one day, James Goodyear was gone. Dead. Everyone was shocked. The doctors called it natural causes. Nobody suspected foul play. Nobody looked at Judy. Why would they? She was the grieving widow, the mother of his children, the woman everyone pitied. But behind closed doors, Judy was smiling, because James had left her something precious, a life insurance policy worth thousands of dollars. Money she could use to start fresh, money she could use to chase the life she believed she deserved. The question is, was James really her first victim? Or were there others before him, men who came too close, men who got in the way? We may never know. But what we do know is this. After James's death, Judy tasted power, real power, and she liked it. And like any addiction, once you taste it, you crave more. By the late 1970s, Judy had reinvented herself. She moved to Colorado, changed her last name to Buenoano, and started a new life. To her neighbors, she was friendly and charming. To her friends, she was smart and ambitious. But behind that warm smile, Judy was already planning her next move. That's when she met Bobby Joe Morris. He was tall, handsome, confident, the kind of man who thought he could handle any woman. But Bobby had no idea what he was walking into. Judy saw him as the perfect target, strong enough to protect her, but not strong enough to see through her lies. Their relationship moved fast. Too fast. And soon Bobby started to feel sick. It was the same pattern all over again. Fatigue, weakness, pain. Doctors were confused. They thought it might be a virus. Nobody suspected the truth, that Judy was slowly killing him, spoon by spoon, dose by dose. And when Bobby Joe Morris died in 1978, Judy did what she always did. She collected the insurance money and disappeared. Another man gone. Another tragedy. Another fortune in her pocket. 2 men dead. 2 payouts. And Judy wasn't done yet. She moved to Florida in the early 1980s, bringing her children with her. She opened a small nail salon, tried to blend into the community. But Judy wasn't interested in small-town life. She was hunting for her next victim. And then she found him. John Gentry, successful, wealthy, the kind of man who could give Judy everything she wanted. She charmed him easily. He fell hard for her. He believed every word she said. He even agreed when she convinced him to take out a massive life insurance policy, just in case something happened to him. John had no idea that something was already in the works. But here's where Judy made her first big mistake. She got greedy. She didn't just want John dead. She wanted him gone fast. So she came up with a plan. A plan so bold, so reckless, it would finally expose the monster behind the mask. In December 1982, John's car exploded. Yes, exploded. Judy had rigged it with dynamite. The blast ripped through the night, tearing metal and glass into fire. But somehow, by sheer luck, John survived. Barely. And when he woke up in the hospital, investigators were waiting. They wanted answers, and what John told them would blow this case wide open, because John suspected something. He remembered the insurance policy. He remembered the pills Judy gave him, and he told the detectives everything. That was the beginning of the end for Judy Buenoano. But the end was still years away, because as police dug deeper, they discovered something far worse than a car bomb. They discovered a trail of bodies. In the next part, we'll follow the investigators as they peel back the layers of Judy's life and uncover a web of poison, fire, and blood that stretched across decades. And trust me, the most chilling part of this story is still to come. Because Judy didn't just kill husbands, she killed something far more innocent, something no one could have imagined. Stay with me. The nightmare is only beginning. The hospital room was silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. John Gentry lay there, bruised, burned, and broken, but alive. Barely alive. The doctors called it a miracle. The explosion that ripped his car apart should have killed him instantly. It didn't, and that mistake was going to cost Judy Buenoano everything. Detectives leaned over John's bed, their faces tense. They had questions. Too many questions. Why would someone want him dead? Who had access to his car? Who stood to gain the most from his death? And then John said a name that would send chills down the spines of everyone in that room. Judy. He told them everything. How Judy convinced him to take out a life insurance policy worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. How she insisted he start taking vitamins that made him feel sick every time he swallowed them. And how she had recently been acting different, cold, distant. It all started to make sense. The insurance, the pills, the explosion. This wasn't an accident. It was a plan. A plan designed by the woman John loved. Detectives launched an investigation. They tore apart Judy's life piece by piece. They checked the insurance policies. They examined the car. And what they found confirmed their worst fears. The explosion wasn't a mechanical failure. It was deliberate. Dynamite had been wired to the ignition system. But as they dug deeper, they uncovered something even darker. This wasn't the first time death had followed Judy Buenoano, not even close. First, they found Bobby Joe Morris, Judy's former boyfriend from Colorado. He died in 1978. Cause of death? Mysterious illness. Doctors thought it was an infection, but the symptoms sounded familiar. Weakness, muscle wasting, severe internal pain. Then they found James Goodyear, Judy's first husband, an Air Force sergeant, dead in 1971. Again, unexplained illness, same symptoms, 3 men, 3 accidents. And in every case, Judy walked away with a fat insurance payout. Coincidence? This was a pattern, a deadly pattern, but the real horror was still to come. As detectives dug into Judy's past, they learned about her children, Michael and James Jr., 2 boys who had been through hell after losing their father. Judy claimed she raised them alone, sacrificed everything for them. But was that true? Or was Judy's love for her own children just another mask? The answer came in the most shocking way imaginable. Investigators discovered that in 1980, Judy's son Michael, then 18 years old, was hospitalized. He had been in constant pain for months. His muscles wasted away, his legs shriveled until he could no longer walk. The doctors were baffled. They thought it might be a neurological disease, maybe muscular dystrophy. But Michael didn't have a genetic disorder. What he had was poison, arsenic, the same poison that killed his stepfather and Bobby Joe. Yes, Judy poisoned her own son, slowly, deliberately. And why? The answer was as cold as her heart: insurance money. When Michael became permanently disabled, Judy collected a $125,000 insurance payout. But that wasn't enough. No, Judy had another plan, a plan that would make even the most hardened detective shudder. On May 13, 1980, Judy suggested a canoe trip on the East River in Florida. She told Michael it would be fun, a chance to relax, to enjoy the water. Michael, wheelchair-bound and trusting, agreed. They went out on the river. Judy helped her son into the canoe. She smiled as she always did. And then she tipped it over. Michael couldn't swim. He was wearing heavy braces on his legs. The water closed over him, cold and unforgiving. He thrashed, struggled, fought for his life, but it was useless. His own mother watched as he sank beneath the surface. When rescuers found his body, they called it an accident, a tragic accident. Everyone believed Judy's story, everyone except the truth. Now, years later, detectives were hearing that story again, but this time from the evidence. And when they pieced it together, the picture was horrifying. Judy didn't just kill her husbands, she killed her boyfriend, she killed her own son, and she almost killed John Gentry. But Judy wasn't done lying. When police questioned her, she played the part perfectly. The grieving widow, the heartbroken mother, the innocent woman caught in a nightmare. "I loved them," she whispered. "I would never hurt my family." But love didn't explain the dynamite. Love didn't explain the poison. Love didn't explain why, every single time someone died, Judy's bank account got bigger. The evidence was stacking up. Police needed more. They needed proof that would hold up in court. And that proof came in the form of dirt, literally. Detectives exhumed the body of James Goodyear, Judy's first husband. When the toxicology tests came back, the results were undeniable. His body was saturated with arsenic, enough to kill a dozen men. And then they tested Bobby Joe Morris. Same result. The pattern was clear. The motive was clear. The killer was clear. Judy Buenoano, the sweet-faced woman who smiled her way through life, was a murderer. A cold-blooded killer who poisoned, burned, and drowned the people who loved her the most. But Judy still thought she could beat the system. She thought she was smarter than the cops. She thought she could talk her way out of anything. She was wrong. In the next part of this series, we'll follow Judy's arrest, the shocking details that came out during the investigation, and the twisted lies she told to cover her tracks. And trust me, this story is far from over, because even behind bars, Judy Buenoano wasn't done. What would she do next? And how far would she go to escape justice? Stay with me. The darkest chapter is about to begin. The evidence was overwhelming. Poison in the bodies, insurance payouts in Judy's name, a trail of death stretching across more than a decade. The smiling widow was a killer. But Judy Buenoano didn't believe in defeat. Not yet. It was the spring of 1983 when detectives finally moved in. Judy was at her modest home in Orlando when they knocked on the door. She opened it calmly, her hair perfectly in place, her lips curled into a polite smile. "Mrs. Buenoano," one detective said, his voice cold. "We need to talk." Judy didn't flinch. She didn't panic. She invited them inside like she was hosting afternoon tea. "Of course, officers," she said sweetly. "What's this about?" What followed was hours of questioning. Detectives laid out the facts: John Gentry's near-fatal car explosion, the insurance policies, the mysterious deaths of James Goodyear and Bobby Joe Morris, and worst of all, the drowning of her son Michael. Most people would have cracked. Most people would have begged for mercy, broken down in tears, or confessed out of sheer desperation. But not Judy. She sat there calm and collected, her voice soft, her eyes wide with innocence. "I loved them," she whispered. "Every single one of them. Why would I hurt my family? Why would I hurt my own son?" Why, indeed? The truth was in the money. Detectives had followed the trail straight to Judy's bank account. After every death, there was a deposit. Life insurance payouts, tens of thousands of dollars at a time, enough to buy cars, jewelry, luxury vacations. Judy didn't just kill for survival, she killed for greed. Still, she denied everything. She called it a witch hunt. She said the police were trying to frame her. And when they finally arrested her for the attempted murder of John Gentry, Judy smiled for the cameras. Yes, smiled. The mugshot of Judy Buenoano is one of the most chilling images you'll ever see. Her head held high, her eyes cold and unflinching, her lips curled into a faint smirk. There was no fear, no shame, no remorse. Because Judy believed she could beat the system. She believed she was smarter than the law. The trial began in 1984, and from the very first day, Judy turned the courtroom into her stage. She wore conservative dresses, spoke softly, and played the role of the grieving widow, a woman who had suffered unimaginable loss. She talked about her hard life, her abusive childhood, her struggle to raise her children alone. The jury listened. Some even pitied her. That was Judy's power. She knew how to make people believe her lies. She knew how to twist sympathy into a weapon. But the prosecution had something stronger than Judy's charm. They had evidence, hard evidence. They presented the toxicology reports. They showed the insurance documents. They brought in experts who explained how arsenic poisoning worked, how it mimicked natural illnesses, how it slowly destroyed the body, and then they told the jury about Michael. That was the breaking point. The moment that changed everything. When the prosecution described how Judy took her disabled son on a canoe ride and tipped him into the river, the courtroom fell silent. People stared at Judy in disbelief. A mother killing her own child? For money? The jurors looked at her face, searching for some flicker of guilt, some sign of humanity. They found nothing. Judy sat there, calm as ever, her lips pressed into a faint smile. It was the smile of a woman who didn't care, a woman who thought she was untouchable. But she wasn't. The jury found her guilty of first-degree murder in Michael's death. They also found her guilty of attempted murder for the car bombing of John Gentry. For those crimes alone, Judy faced life in prison. But prosecutors weren't done. They wanted justice for the other men, the husbands and lovers who never saw death coming. In 1985, Judy was tried for the murder of James Goodyear, her first husband. Once again, the evidence told the story. Arsenic poisoning, life insurance payouts, a pattern of calculated killings. The verdict was the same. Guilty. And this time, the sentence wasn't life. It was death. Judy Buenoano was sent to Florida's death row, the first woman in nearly 40 years to face execution in the state. You'd think that would break her. You'd think the thought of lethal injection, or worse, the electric chair, would finally make her show fear. But Judy didn't break. She didn't cry. She didn't beg for mercy. Instead, she did something that sent chills down the spine of everyone who met her. She smiled. Yes, smiled. Calm, cold, almost amused. One reporter asked her if she had anything to say to the families of her victims. Judy looked him straight in the eye and said, "I have nothing to apologize for. No regret, no guilt, no soul." And here's the most terrifying part. Even behind bars, Judy was dangerous. She wrote letters, manipulated people, and kept spinning her lies. Some believed her. Some even sent her money. She was still playing the game, but time was running out. The appeals would only delay the inevitable. Judy Buenoano's date with death was coming, and when it came, it would be historic, because Judy wasn't going to die quietly. In the next part, we'll take you inside the final years of Judy's life on death row, how she spent her last days, the chilling things she said, and the shocking moment when Florida pulled the switch. The execution of the Black Widow. Stay with me. The end is near. But the horror is far from over. The courtroom doors closed behind her, but Judy Buenoano didn't look back. She walked with steady steps, her head high, her face calm. The jury had spoken. Death. For most people, that word would shatter their soul. But Judy wasn't like most people. Fear never touched her eyes. If anything, there was a flicker of satisfaction, because Judy believed she was in control, always in control, even when the world thought she had lost everything. They took her to Florida State Prison, a cold, gray fortress that held the darkest souls in America. There, in the women's death row section, Judy settled into her new reality. A tiny cell, steel bars, and a clock that ticked closer and closer to her execution day. For some inmates, death row is torment, days of silence, nights of screaming, endless time to think about the lives they destroyed. But Judy didn't break. She didn't show remorse. She didn't cry herself to sleep. Instead, she adapted. Like a predator caged in steel, she learned how to play the game, even from behind bars. She wrote letters, hundreds of them, to friends, strangers, even reporters, letters filled with charm and carefully crafted lies. She told people she was innocent. She said the system had failed her, that she was the victim of a conspiracy. And unbelievably, some believed her. They sent money. They sent gifts. Some even fell in love with her, The Black Widow still had her web, and men were still getting caught in it. Years passed. Appeals came and went. Judy fought hard to stay alive, using every loophole, every trick her lawyers could find. She claimed her trial was unfair. She claimed the evidence was flawed. But deep down, she knew the truth. The evidence was ironclad. There was no escape this time. By the early 1990s, Judy Buenoano had become a name whispered in true crime circles. She was infamous, a woman who poisoned, burned, and drowned the people closest to her, a woman who killed for money, a woman who killed her own son. The media called her the Black Widow, and Judy wore that name like a crown. Reporters visited her in prison. They wanted to understand her. What made her kill? Did she regret it? Did she feel anything at all? One journalist asked her directly, "Why did you do it?" Judy tilted her head, her dark eyes glittering with something that wasn't remorse. She smiled faintly and said, "Everybody has problems. I just solved mine differently." Those words sent shivers down the reporter's spine, because they weren't the words of a broken woman. They were the words of a predator, a woman who believed she had done nothing wrong. And that belief stayed with her until the very end. In early 1998, the state of Florida set the date, March 30th. That would be the day Judy Buenoano paid the ultimate price for her crimes. The day the electric chair would end her life. The news hit the media like a storm. For weeks, the headlines screamed, "Black Widow to die." Cameras swarmed the prison gates. Reporters camped outside, waiting to capture the final moments of one of America's most notorious female killers. Inside her cell, Judy prepared for death with the same calmness she carried her entire life. No tears, no panic, no fear. She spent her last days writing letters, reading the Bible, and talking to her lawyers. On the night before her execution, she ate her final meal, steamed broccoli, asparagus, strawberries, and tea, a strange choice for a woman who had lived such a life of chaos and blood. At dawn on March 30th, 1998, guards came for her. They opened the steel door to her cell and told her it was time. Judy stood up slowly, smoothed down her prison uniform, and walked out with her head high. The corridor was silent except for the sound of her footsteps. Every eye was on her as she approached the chamber, the infamous electric chair known as Old Sparky. She sat down calmly, no shaking, no trembling. She looked at the witnesses through the glass, her face expressionless, her eyes cold. The guards strapped her in, leather belts across her arms, legs, and chest. They placed the metal cap on her head, securing the electrode to her scalp. They lowered the black leather mask over her face. The warden stepped forward. "Do you have any last words?" he asked. Judy's voice was steady. "No, sir." No apology. No confession. No remorse. Just 2 words. And then silence. The executioner flipped the switch. A surge of electricity ripped through her body, jerking her violently against the straps. Her fingers curled. Her head snapped back. Smoke rose from her flesh as the current burned through her. For 2 agonizing minutes the power flowed, and then stillness. The doctor stepped in, checked her pulse, and nodded. Time of death, 7:13 a.m. The Black Widow was dead, but her story would live on forever. Because Judy Buenoano wasn't just a murderer, she was a symbol of something far more terrifying, the predator who hides in plain sight, the woman who smiles as she kills, the mother who drowns her own son. In the next part, we'll look deeper into the psychology of Judy Buenoano, what made her tick, what drove her to kill, and why experts believe she would have kept killing if she hadn't been stopped. And trust me, what you're about to hear will make you question everything you know about love, loyalty, and the women you think you can trust. Stay with me. The darkness goes deeper. Judy Buenoano's body lay in the prison morgue. But even in death, the questions lingered like smoke after a fire. Who was this woman, really? How could a mother calmly drown her own son? How could someone kill so often, so coldly, and still smile like nothing happened? To understand Judy, you have to enter her mind, and that's a place far darker than the cell she spent her last days in. She was born in 1943 in Buenoano, Texas. At first glance, her childhood didn't scream tragedy. She wasn't raised in some gothic horror tale. But look closer, and you'll see the shadows. Her father was strict. Her stepmother was cold, almost cruel. Love wasn't given freely in that house. It was something to be earned, something to manipulate. Judy learned early that punishment was part of life, and that control was the only real safety. By her teenage years, she had mastered the one skill that would become her most lethal weapon: charm. She knew how to smile at the right time, how to tilt her head just enough, how to make someone feel important even when they were nothing more than a pawn in her game. People wanted to trust her, people wanted to believe her, and she made sure they did. But why did she kill? Why poison and drown the people closest to her? The answer was simple and horrifying: money. Every death meant an insurance payout. Every husband, every lover, every person who thought she cared about them was a dollar sign in Judy's eyes. This wasn't about passion or anger. It was about profit. And that made her far more dangerous because greed doesn't sleep. Greed doesn't feel guilt. It just grows. Her first known victim was her husband, James Goodyear, a respected sergeant who survived the Vietnam War only to come home and marry his executioner. In 1971, after returning from duty, James started feeling sick, mysterious symptoms no doctor could fully explain. Within a few months, he was dead. The cause? Never confirmed at the time. But years later, exhumation revealed the truth: arsenic poisoning. Judy had been feeding him death one spoonful at a time. And what did she do after his funeral? She collected the life insurance money, packed her bags, and moved on with a smile. But that wasn't enough. Greed doesn't stop. She moved to Colorado with her new lover, Bobby Joe Morris. In 1978, Bobby started feeling the same symptoms: pain, weakness, confusion. And just like James, Bobby died. The insurance money flowed again. But Judy's ambition didn't end with lovers. She turned on her own flesh and blood. Her son, Michael, a young man full of life and trust, suddenly found himself in agony. His muscles weakened. His legs gave out. Doctors said it was a mysterious neurological condition, but Judy knew the truth. The poison had worked, and when Michael could no longer walk, she bought him metal braces for his legs. Then she planned the most horrific act of all. In 1980, Judy took Michael on a canoe trip. The water was calm, the day serene. But in the middle of that lake, the canoe flipped. Michael, trapped by his heavy braces, sank to the bottom. He drowned while his mother swam to safety. Witnesses would later recall how strangely calm she seemed. No screams, no panic, no desperation, just cold silence. And when it was over, another insurance check. By the time investigators connected the dots, Judy had killed at least 3 people and injured more. She even tried to blow up another lover with a car bomb when poison didn't work fast enough. Her trail was a mix of charm, lies, and death. Psychologists who studied her said Judy had a chilling personality profile. She was manipulative, narcissistic, and calculating. She didn't just kill, she planned. She staged accidents, she crafted alibis. And most terrifying of all, she never once expressed genuine remorse. To Judy, people weren't human beings. They were stepping stones, obstacles, opportunities. When asked why she did it, she gave an answer that froze the blood of everyone who heard it. Everybody has problems. I just solved mine differently. Those words reveal everything about Judy Buenoano. In her mind, murder wasn't evil. It wasn't even wrong. It was simply a solution. And if she hadn't been caught, experts believe she would have kept killing. She would have found another man, another policy, another opportunity to profit from death. Because the hunger for control, the hunger for money, it doesn't stop. Not for someone like Judy. The Black Widow's web stretched far beyond the bodies she left behind. It reached into the hearts of those who trusted her, those who believed her lies, those who never saw the darkness hiding behind her smile. And that darkness didn't vanish when she died in the electric chair. It lingers, whispering a question that haunts everyone who studies her case. How many more would she have killed if no one had stopped her? In the next part, we'll dive into the interviews, the cold exchanges where Judy revealed pieces of her soul, words that show just how detached she was from human life, words that prove some monsters don't hide in shadows. They hide in plain sight. Stay with me, because the deeper we go, the darker it gets. Judy Buenoano sat in the small interrogation room, her hands cuffed loosely in front of her, her expression calm, almost bored, like she was waiting for a delayed flight rather than being questioned about multiple murders. The investigators had been circling her for years, collecting fragments, exhuming bodies, pulling together a puzzle where every piece was soaked in death. Now finally, they had her cornered. But Judy didn't flinch. Not once. Her eyes followed the detectives with a faint smile playing on her lips, like a predator humoring prey that thinks it has the upper hand. When they laid out the evidence, the poisoned lovers, the drowned son, the car bomb, she tilted her head and shrugged. "You can't prove that," she said softly. Her voice was almost soothing, like a nurse reassuring a patient. And in a way, that was exactly who she had always been, a caregiver on the outside, a killer underneath. What made Judy so terrifying wasn't just the murders, it was the way she carried them out. There was no rage, no panic, no sudden loss of control. Everything was planned, calculated, deliberate. Poison in a glass, arsenic in a meal, a canoe in calm waters, a car rigged to explode. She didn't stab, she didn't shoot, she didn't leave a mess. She left death wrapped in the illusion of accidents, of fate, of bad luck. The investigators played every card they had. They showed her photographs of Michael, her son, laughing, alive before the braces, before the lake. They asked her if she thought about him when she went to bed at night. Her answer? A faint smile, a shake of the head, and then silence. Judy never confessed, not even once. She didn't need to. The evidence was already screaming louder than any words she could say. By 1983, the walls closed in. Judy was arrested for the murder of Michael Buenoano, her own flesh and blood. The charge shook the community. People who had known Judy for years, friends, neighbors, co-workers, couldn't believe it. She had been the woman who volunteered, who helped others, who played the role of a perfect mother. But behind that mask, there was something unrecognizable, something monstrous. The trial was brutal. The prosecutors painted her as a black widow, a woman who seduced men only to kill them. They laid out the timeline. James Goodyear in 1971, Bobby Joe Morris in 1978, Michael in 1980, and the failed car bombing of John Gentry in 1983. They showed the insurance payouts, the financial motives, the cold pattern that ran through every death. And as witness after witness took the stand, the jury saw the truth. This wasn't coincidence. This was a career of murder. But Judy didn't crumble under pressure. She didn't cry, didn't beg for mercy. She sat there like a statue, her face unreadable, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Some jurors later admitted that what disturbed them most wasn't the evidence. It was her. That calmness, that control, that total absence of remorse. It was like she believed she was smarter than everyone else in the room, like she was still playing the game even as the verdict loomed over her head. And then came the moment that sealed her fate, the testimony about the canoe. Prosecutors described how Michael, crippled and unable to swim because of the heavy metal braces his mother had insisted he wear, was taken out on the water by the one person he trusted most, how the canoe tipped, how Judy swam to safety while her son sank like a stone. The courtroom was silent as those details hit like a hammer. There were jurors who couldn't even look at her after that. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty. Judy Buenoano was sentenced to death for the murder of her son. Later, additional convictions would pile on: attempted murder for the car bombing, and evidence tying her to the deaths of her husbands and lovers. She was now officially one of the most notorious female serial killers in American history. But even after the sentencing, Judy never broke. No tearful breakdowns, no desperate pleas. She carried herself like a woman who still believed she was in control. And in a way, she was. Because Judy Buenoano wasn't like other killers who basked in chaos or confessed to feed their ego. Judy thrived on silence, on secrets, on the power of not giving anyone the satisfaction of knowing the full truth. How many people did she really kill? The courts proved 3 murders and 1 attempted murder. But investigators believed the number could be higher. There were whispers of other men, other relationships, other unexplained deaths that followed Judy like a shadow. We'll never know the true count, because Judy took that secret with her to the grave. As the years passed and appeals failed, the clock began ticking down. Florida was preparing for her execution. She was kept in a small cell on death row at the Florida State Prison, a place designed for the worst of the worst. And yet, even there, Judy carried herself with a strange grace. Guards who watched her said she was polite, calm, even cheerful at times. She read books. She wrote letters. She never once admitted guilt. To the very end, Judy claimed she was innocent. But the evidence, the poison, the insurance money, the drowned son, told another story. A story of greed, a story of control, a story of a woman who believed she could keep getting away with murder because she was smarter than everyone else. In the final months of her life, Judy became a subject of fascination for journalists and criminologists. They wanted to know what made her tick. Was it greed alone, or something deeper, something darker? Some experts called her a classic psychopath, a person without empathy, without conscience, who saw people as tools, not humans. Others saw her as a product of her past, shaped by abuse and neglect into someone who could never trust love, only use it as a weapon. But the truth? The truth is probably something no one will ever fully understand, because Judy Buenoano never let anyone inside her mind. And maybe that's the most terrifying thing about her. Even now, decades later, she remains a mystery, a smiling face, hiding a heart of stone. The date of her execution was set for March 30th, 1998. And when that day came, the woman who had once believed she could cheat death finally had to face it herself. But even then, even in her final moments, she left the world with a chill that still lingers to this day. In the next part, you'll witness what happened in those last hours. How Judy spent her final night, the words she spoke before the electricity surged through her body, and why some say she went to the chair with the same eerie calm that had carried her through every murder. Stay with me. The end is coming. And it's darker than you think. The night before her execution, Judy Buenoano lay on the narrow bed in her death row cell, staring at the cracked ceiling. For years, she had controlled the narrative. For years, she had played the role of the survivor, the widow, the grieving mother. And now? The roles were reversed. No amount of manipulation, no carefully chosen words, no fake tears could change what was coming. Outside her cell, the air hummed with the cold efficiency of routine. Guards walked past without speaking. Journalists camped outside the prison gates, their cameras ready to capture history. The first woman to be executed in Florida in nearly 150 years. It was a spectacle, a modern-day execution with an audience hungry for every detail. But Judy? Judy didn't care about the cameras. She never did. At exactly 5 p.m., a guard approached her cell and asked if she wanted her last meal. Judy's request was simple: steamed vegetables, strawberries, and tea. No steak, no fried chicken, no heavy comfort food like so many others before her. Some people saw that as a sign of guilt, a final attempt to show control, to leave the world on her own terms. Others thought it meant nothing, just another part of the mask she had worn all her life. As she ate, slow and methodical, her thoughts, if she had any, remained locked behind that same cold smile. Did she think of James, the husband she poisoned for money? Of Bobby Joe, the lover who trusted her and paid with his life? Of Michael, her son, who died in the black water while she swam to safety? Or did she push it all away, burying it under the armor of denial she had worn for decades? The guards escorted her back to the cell after her meal. Time crawled forward, every second louder than the last. Midnight came and went, then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. Outside, a storm brewed in the distance, lightning flashing across the horizon like the flicker of old fluorescent lights. It was fitting, almost cinematic, a night split between silence and sudden bursts of violence in the sky. Judy sat on her bed, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. A priest visited her briefly, offering prayer. She declined confession. She didn't need absolution. She didn't admit to anything. And that silence, the silence of a woman who had killed and never once acknowledged it, was what haunted everyone in that prison. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed and quiet, as if nature itself had prepared for what was about to happen. At 7 a.m., the guards returned. It was time. They opened the cell door, shackled her hands and feet, and led her down the long corridor toward the execution chamber. Every step echoed like a drum beat, steady and final. The witnesses were already there: journalists, officials, a few people connected to the victims. They sat in stiff chairs behind a glass partition, their faces pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. Some wanted justice. Some wanted closure. Some just wanted to see the woman who had outsmarted, outlasted, and outkilled so many for so long finally face the one thing she couldn't escape. When Judy entered the room, there was no fight, no resistance. She moved with the same eerie calm she had carried her entire life. The Black Widow walking into her own web. The guards helped her into the chair, strapping her arms, her legs, her torso, securing her like a doll in a grotesque display. She didn't flinch. She didn't tremble. In the final months of her life, Judy became a subject of fascination for journalists and criminologists. They wanted to know what made her tick. Was it greed alone, or something deeper, something darker? Some experts called her a classic psychopath, a person without empathy, without conscience, who saw people as tools, not humans. Others saw her as a product of her past, shaped by abuse and neglect into someone who could never trust love, only use it as a weapon. But the truth? The truth is probably something no one will ever fully understand, because Judy Buenoano never let anyone inside her mind. And maybe that's the most terrifying thing about her. Even now, decades later, she remains a mystery, a smiling face, hiding a heart of stone. The date of her execution was set for March 30th, 1998. And when that day came, the woman who had once believed she could cheat death finally had to face it herself. But even then, even in her final moments, she left the world with a chill that still lingers to this day. In the next part, you'll witness what happened in those last hours. How Judy spent her final night, the words she spoke before the electricity surged through her body, and why some say she went to the chair with the same eerie calm that had carried her through every murder. Stay with me. The end is coming. And it's darker than you think. The night before her execution, Judy Buenoano lay on the narrow bed in her death row cell, staring at the cracked ceiling. For years, she had controlled the narrative, For years, she had played the role of the survivor, the widow, the grieving mother. And now? The roles were reversed. No amount of manipulation, no carefully chosen words, no fake tears could change what was coming. Outside her cell, the air hummed with the cold efficiency of routine. Guards walked past without speaking. Journalists camped outside the prison gates, their cameras ready to capture history. The first woman to be executed in Florida in nearly 150 years. It was a spectacle, a modern-day execution with an audience hungry for every detail. But Judy? Judy didn't care about the cameras. She never did. At exactly 5 p.m., a guard approached her cell and asked if she wanted her last meal. Judy's request was simple: steamed vegetables, strawberries, and tea. No steak, no fried chicken, no heavy comfort food like so many others before her. Some people saw that as a sign of guilt, a final attempt to show control, to leave the world on her own terms. Others thought it meant nothing, just another part of the mask she had worn all her life. As she ate, slow and methodical, her thoughts, if she had any, remained locked behind that same cold smile. Did she think of James, the husband she poisoned for money? Of Bobby Joe, the lover who trusted her and paid with his life? Of Michael, her son, who died in the black water while she swam to safety? Or did she push it all away, burying it under the armor of denial she had worn for decades? The guards escorted her back to the cell after her meal. Time crawled forward, every second louder than the last. Midnight came and went, then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. Outside, a storm brewed in the distance, lightning flashing across the horizon like the flicker of old fluorescent lights. It was fitting, almost cinematic, a night split between silence and sudden bursts of violence in the sky. Judy sat on her bed, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. A priest visited her briefly, offering prayer. She declined confession. She didn't need absolution. She didn't admit to anything. And that silence, the silence of a woman who had killed and never once acknowledged it, was what haunted everyone in that prison. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed and quiet, as if nature itself had prepared for what was about to happen. At 7 a.m., the guards returned. It was time. They opened the cell door, shackled her hands and feet, and led her down the long corridor toward the execution chamber. Every step echoed like a drum beat, steady and final. The witnesses were already there: journalists, officials, a few people connected to the victims. They sat in stiff chairs behind a glass partition, their faces pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. Some wanted justice. Some wanted closure. Some just wanted to see the woman who had outsmarted, outlasted, and outkilled so many for so long finally face the one thing she couldn't escape. When Judy entered the room, there was no fight, no resistance. She moved with the same eerie calm she had carried her entire life. The Black Widow walking into her own web. The guards helped her into the chair, strapping her arms, her legs, her torso, securing her like a doll in a grotesque display. She didn't flinch. She didn't tremble.